Welcome into the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. Saturday, April the 11th at Oaklawn Park. I'm Tom Leach, along with Jim Goodman, Keeneland's Director of Wagering Development. This should have been the Arkansas Derby card out at Oaklawn, but they've pushed that back to May the 2nd and added a couple of races that have big fields, really nice betting card on Saturday. And we're going to talk first about the two stakes races, Jim. We'll begin in the 9th race. It's the Oaklawn Mile. This is for older horses and obviously at a mile. And it's attracted a field of 14, a couple of good 3-year-olds from last year, Improbable and Mr. Money now as 4-year-olds. Tom's d'Etat, who won the Grade 1 Clark last year at Churchill, and the Fayette here at Keeneland. So tell me who you like in the Oaklawn Mile.
Well, the three horses that you mentioned were the three that I tried to decide between. Tom's d'Etat, from a buyer standpoint, from a class standpoint, is a standout here. The only question is, this is his first race back. The last race was the Clark on November 29th. Gave him a rest this winter, but Stahl has brought him back off long layoffs before, and he's done well both times. He ran well the Ali Sheba off a long layoff at Churchill back in May of 19, and he won a $100,000 optional race off a long layoff at Churchill in November of 18. So he loves Churchill, obviously. He never raced at Oaklawn, but the Churchill form usually holds up down there. I like him a lot here. I'm not going to single him when we get to the pick 4, simply because those two horses you mentioned. Improbable is the question mark for me. He did not run well in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Got beat by 9 lengths to Spun to Run. Omaha Beach finished second that day. He was 4-1 there, though. I think he was like maybe third choice. Just didn't fire after a really good race at Del Mar in the Shared Belief, and came back and ran second or third in the Pennsylvania Derby. But he's coming off a long layoff as well, stuck in the 14 hole, which is a negative. But you can't underestimate Baffert, so I'm going to use him as well. And if I have more money, I'm going to go deeper later on. If I have more money, I'd use more money in here. That's not a pun intended, but he also exits the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, where he was 7-1. Never really got into it. I don't know if he didn't like the track at Santa Anita, but he was very consistent last summer and last fall at Indiana Mountaineer Parks. And he's got a lot of back class, and he might like this racetrack as well. But Tom's d'Etat is my pick here, and I almost singled him in pick 4, but with Improbable sitting out there on the outside, he kind of scares me a little bit. So I'm going to go too deep. We'll get to pick 4.
I ended up taking a shot with Mr. Money. I love the series of 5 and 6 furlong works for trainer Brett Calhoun, and he's really good off the layoff. And this horse looked like he was maybe going to be able to do a little more than he did in the final quarter of last year. But now he's freshened up for a 4-year-old campaign, and Tom's d'Etat, as you mentioned with the buyer numbers, stands out. But if he's 7 years old now, and he hadn't raced since Thanksgiving weekend, so maybe he needs one at age 7, and Mr. Money could maybe, from the 2-hole, I think, well drawn to get a spot. That's why Baffert at Oaklawn's always dangerous, but the 14-hole going a mile is a big ask. So mainly on post position, I was trying to beat Tom's d'Etat, and I went to Mr. Money, but I'll use all 3 of them when we get to the pick 4. The only other one I would think might be worth throwing in is Bank It. His last race, I don't think really is indicative of who the horse is. He's not quite as good as these, but he's run well at Oaklawn, and I think as a long shot to hit the board, second or third, if you're playing exactas and tries, you could take a shot there, because I think you probably get more than, I think it's like 8-1 on the morning line. My guess is you'll get more than that. 10th race is a maiden race we'll get to when we talk about our pick 4. The 11th is the Oaklawn Stakes. This is a race they added after they moved the Arkansas Derby, and it's attracted a big field of 3-year-olds who will go a mile and an eighth as a possibility of a prep for them for the Arkansas Derby on May the 2nd. Baffert ships 1,000 words in from California. You've got Basin from the Asmussen barn down on the inside, who was 3rd in the Rebel. Beyond those two, some that are less accomplished, but with some great promise. So how did you see the Oaklawn Stakes?
I think it's a good race, and I think there are some horses here that, could develop later in their 3-year-old season. And this strange year with the Derby being in September, you might have some horses that have enough maturity by then to get in the Triple Crown races. I went with 1,000 Words here. The San Felipe was a big disappointment for Baffert. Coming off that Robert B. Lewis, was undefeated, 3 for 3, and win the San Felipe, and just didn't run very well. Got beat by 11 lengths by Authentic, another Baffert. Finished 4th, got beat by Storm the Court, last year's champion. So I think Baffert took a step back with this one and said, I usually do well at Oaklawn. Let's ship him there and see what happens. And I'm sure he's prepping for the May 2nd Arkansas Derby. Basin for Asmussen. Asmussen is just so cold at Oaklawn. Before yesterday, he was 0 for his last 40. So it's hard for me to get excited about any of his horses. I truly believe that when a barn is cold, it stays cold. But Giroux picks up this mount from Castellano. He ran the Rebel. Didn't run badly. Got beat by Denal. Had beaten Shoplifted by 6.5 back in the Hopeful back last year. He's really good as a 2-year-old. But hard for me to take a stand as Asmussen, but you got to use him in the pick 4. I'll also use Shoplifted. Tayshaun for Richard Baltus is intriguing with Joel Rosario picking up the mount. Went wire to wire on a sloppy track to win an $80,000 optional claimer back in March 14th. Don't know if it's a sloppy track, but that's 12 points better than he's ever done. If he moves forward off that, he's a contender. And then Digital for Brett Calhoun. Always like Calhoun's horses. B.J. Hernandez rides him out of the Risen Star. Got beat by 6 lengths by Mr. Monomoy. Didn't disgrace himself, but obviously needs to step up to beat these. I'm going to go deep in the pick 4. 1,000 Words would be my win pick. I don't think it's going to get money because of Baffert, but if you can find a price, maybe Tayshaun at maybe a 5-1 or something might be a price as well for Baltus.
I'm going to take Basin, and I am leery of the barn being cold. If not for that, I'd like this horse probably even more. Went back and watched his Rebel, and coming off sprint races and first start of the year, I would have thought he would have been up close to the lead, and instead Castellano rode him that day. Didn't really get him out well, so Nadal shot to the lead along the inside, and down behind him is Basin catching all that mud. He was throwing his head around, didn't like that. And then finally, in the stretch, they get him out off the rail, and he's running better, but fighting the rider early, didn't have a big finishing kick. I like the switch to Giroux, who's really been aggressive in his rides in the last couple of months. So I think from the inside, he gets this horse out better. Doesn't have to be on the lead, but just gets a better position. And second start off a layoff, that's a 22% angle for Asmussen. 3 nice works, and the Asmussen pattern usually when he's coming up to a big race, a nice sharp 5 furlong work followed by a slow half mile, and that's what you see with this horse. So I like Basin in here a lot, but the barn being cold, certainly not going to single him. 1,000 Words is a must-use, obviously, for Baffert, and if you can throw out the last race, really looks strong. Tayshaun's the next one that I had written down. I went back and watched his race. I thought that was impressive, and I could see, 3-year-old that's just getting good. Digital was the next one I had written down. Sir Rick and Farmington Road were a couple of others just playing within the race, but when we get to the pick 4 here in a minute, I'm not going to go very deep in here. So let's talk about the pick 4. It starts in the 9th with the Oaklawn Mile. Got that maiden race in the 10th, an allowance optional claimer at a mile in the 16th for 4-year-olds and up that finishes it in race 12. What's your pick 4 ticket look like?
Okay, starts off pretty simple. Going to use Tom's d'Etat and Improbable, so 3 and 14. Second leg going 4 deep. It's a tough little maiden special weight. I had a hard time carving this one down. My top pick would be the 12 horse for Rosario, Hunt the Front for Nick Zito. Horses run second last 2 times out at Oaklawn. Obviously has an affinity for the track. Don't like the 12 hole, but he's been outside before. He's run outside just about every race he's had. So I like him a little bit. But I also use Dean Martini, the 10 for Brad Cox, Eddie Forever, the 9 for Diodoro, and Instigated. The Oxide, the 7 for Eddie Keneally. I feel that Instigated because he can't win at 50,000, and they're moving him up to a maiden special weight. So they've tried everything with this horse. I'm not going to go for an 0 for 8 maiden going against other horses that have tried maiden special weight and been successful. Oxide has run two really good thirds at Gulfstream last two times out in Canale and Hernandez. So the 4 horses there are 7, 9, 10, and 12. Then in the stakes race, the Oaklawn, I'm going to use 5 horses. Basin, the 1, 1,000 Words, the 4, the 6 horse Shoplifted, the 8 Tayshawn, and the 9 Digital. So 1, 4, 6, 8, 9. I don't have a whole lot of money left in the 12th, so I've got 3 deep here, 5, 6, and 10. Popular Kid for Rosario, Exalting for Maker, and then the 10 horse Sunny Smack for Donnie Von Himmel, who probably be my top pick off the last 2 races at Oaklawn with an 89 and a 90 buyer. So going 5, 6, 10 in that race. So here's my pick 4 for $60. 3, 14 with 7, 9, 10, 12 with 1, 4, 6, 8, 9 with 5, 6, and 10.
I could not find a single, so I'm spending $75 on my pick 4 ticket, a little more than usual. But if you can hit it with these big fields, I think you'll get a decent return, even with mostly favorites. I'm using 2, 3, and 14 in the first leg, Mr. Money, Tom's d'Etat, and Improbable. 5 deep in the maiden race, Oxide the 7, 80 Forever the 9, Dean Martini the 10, all the ones you mentioned. I'm going to use Urban Knight, the 8 horse from the Asmussen barn. I'm going to toss the 12 just on the post position, but could come to regret that. And I'm going to use one more, Overshadow. It's Donnie Von Himmel for Pen Oak Stud, longtime client of his. Horse run one time, was a distant third, but there was a runaway winner, and I could just see that horse improving in a second start. So I'm going to throw that one in just to try to catch a price. In the 11th race, I'll use 2 horses, Basin and 1,000 Words. Just take a stand with those 2, because I'm going to go 5 deep in the 12th. The 3 that you mentioned, Popular Kid, I think probably would be my win pick, Exulting and Sunny Smack. I'm going to also use Casanova just out of respect for Brad Cox, and then Limonite, another one from the Asmussen barn. So if Steve heats up on Saturday, I might have a good day. So it's 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. So I'm 2, 3, 14 with 3, 7, 8, 9, 10 with 1, 4 with 4, 5, 6, 9, 10 for $75. Really nice card. They've got I think some big fields and I think 13 races at Gulfstream on Saturday. So the racing game is still going at selected spots around the country, and it's a great way to spend your Saturday afternoon. You can play through Keeneland Select and watch races where you don't already know the outcome. The only sport left where you can still do that right now. So best of luck, and we'll be back next week with another edition of the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.